Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Debbie. How are you today?
I am very well today, hanging out in the background with you, Miss Colleen. So happy to be here with you.
Thank you. It's so nice having you. I know you had a nice little getaway to Florida, so I'm very jealous of your little tan that you got sporting there.
All righty, and I'm excited for today's class. We got something a little new. I love it when I throw out a request. Hey, Colleen, I got a great idea. Can you make it happen?
I always love it. I love a lot of the new products that we're seeing, especially in cloud. I'm loving the new Cloud CMA. Just used it yesterday with the live version. So it's always fun doing these new classes and bringing new things to the table. So
yeah, it's all about content. Those are some of the things. Hey, as long as we're talking about content, that's one of the big focuses of MiRealSource is bringing you a lot of different content. So Colleen has been co-hosting our Mixing It Up webinars, the every Thursday event, which is fantastic. Those have been really, really cool. I think I only missed one, so I caught it on YouTube after that. So it's a nice thing that all of our classes are being recorded on YouTube. So if you miss it when it's live and happening, because, oh my gosh, maybe you had a client that needed you. It's kind of crazy.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and of course subscribe to that. And Roger Martin, good morning to you as well. Always good to see you.
I always love when I get to drive around and I'm seeing, so many of the names on, the big. I know I drive down County Line and I always see Roger's sign, and so I'm seeing a lot of people that we get to talk to every week. So it's a lot of fun. All right, so I say we go ahead, Debbie. It's about 4 minutes after. Can we go ahead and get started?
Sounds great. Excellent.
All right, terrific. I'm going to go ahead and just minimize this so that I can see a little bit better. And Debbie, can you see my screen with the Paragon interface
yes,
there? Awesome.
Yes, ma'am. I see your wonderful KW Lakeside private label MLS right there.
Yes. So if I haven't got to meet you before, I think I know most of the people that were on the registration list, but my name is Colleen Delange. I am on staff at MiRealSource, but I've also been a realtor for 22 years now. It makes me feel old every time I say it like that. And so my goal today is to do two things. One, show you a little preview of what just got released about 2 weeks ago with the new Cloud CMA Live. It's got some integrated calling features. It's got a lot of new additions that I'm really excited about, as far as it allows you to put video content in. You can use live streaming services to present your CMA, like Zoom and Hangout and Screen, and so a lot of cool things there. But it also now does things like it will compute a lot of the numbers for you. For instance, if your subject property has 2 bathrooms, but some of the comps you chose have 3, it will actually show you the differences. It'll highlight the difference in square footage if you are using comps that maybe have 10% less square footage, and maybe you want to figure that into maybe why that comp closed a little bit lower. It's also now interactive, so you can actually pull comps in on the fly. It does a lot of cool stuff, so I'm going to take you on a real quick tour of that. But our main focus today is really to give you the ins and outs of choosing the right comps. What do you need to know? What do the appraisers use? How are you going to make sure that you're giving your seller the right number? How can you do price ranges? And so we're going to cover all of that today. But I'm kind of backwards. I kind of like to show you what you're going to create before you actually spend a lot of time learning, hey, do I want to learn how to do this? What is the overall product? Is it going to be something that I find helpful? And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to share this so that you can see it. And basically, when you're using Cloud CMA, if you're not familiar with Cloud, it makes a wow presentation for your sellers. And the cool thing, this actually was a listing appointment I had last night, and I'm happy to say I got the listing. They were very impressed with my report. And the nice thing about Cloud CMA is it's very simple. It's easy for the seller to review and understand. It's also easy to bring in custom pages. So as you can see in my report, in my Cloud CMA report, I actually have the MLS ticket from when I sold them the house. Gosh, when did I sell them the house? I sold them back in 2008. I sold them the home. And so now, of course, they're getting ready to sell their home again. So they were the buy side in 2008, and now they're the sell side. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to have all that history right in my Cloud CMA report so I can remind them what they actually paid, when they actually purchased it, were there concessions. All of that is right there, as you can see. I also want to pull in things like the BS&A record. I want to pull in the tax information. I want to be able to pull in the property information. So you can pull all of that into your Cloud report. Another thing that I'm a big fan of is providing them a market snapshot. What I generally do is I go into Market Stats, another product that we offer through your MiRealSource benefits. And I like to actually pull a history of what's going on in their neighborhood. So what I did is just some fast stats on Washington Township. When I ran this, the numbers were 24% down in inventory. So if you can kind of see where my mouse is, they're down 24.9% in inventory. But wow, look at what it does to your median and average sales price. Look what we're talking about as far as how long is it taking to close these. Last year, it took 28 days. This year, it's taking 12. So it's kind of supply and demand, right? If you don't have enough to sell, you're on average seeing higher sales prices, and you're seeing the times that it's taking to go pending or to sell go down. So kind of cool. And you will notice one new thing, ABO, that's a new status you're probably seeing here. Really what that means is it's still accruing days on market. It's kind of considered an active listing because it hasn't been pending, but it kind of really is pending if you think about it, because they've accepted an offer, but they're still looking at backup offers. So you can still submit a backup offer. So you can see that even in Cloud, that is now a separate status. And we're going to be talking about that topic on our Mixing It Up on Thursday. Taylor Fedewa and I host a show every Thursday at 10 a.m. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about ABOs, what that status means, what coming soon means, and what you really need to know. Now, I'm going to be totally honest. I'm not a big fan of either one of those statuses, but they've been brought to our marketplace because we do the data share, which we have 92% of the state. So we're going to tell you just what you really need to know. What does that status mean? What are the rules? And how does it impact you? All right, so let's look at our comps. So as I mentioned, if you want a shorter report, you can do comps stacked up alongside of each other, or you can do full detailed reports. So there are different reports that you can choose from, and it'll allow you to stack up the subject property next to the comps that you've selected. So there's some great pages that give you even more additional information about the comps that you've selected. We can see here the average days on market is about 63, and on average, homes sold for an average of 97% of their list price. And obviously that's due to our market conditions right now, right? Supply and demand, we don't have enough on the market, so they're getting very close and in many cases over asking. And then there's some great marketing pages. All right, so one of the things I wanted to quickly highlight is that now there is the new Cloud CMA Live. So let me give you a quick tour of that, and then we'll get into choosing all of the right comps. So right on your homepage, right on your CMA homepage, you're going to notice that down here it used to say slideshow link. That's actually still there. It's now hidden under the little dots over here to the right. So the slideshow link is still there. If you were a fan of the slideshow, you can still use it. But I got to tell you, I think if you try the Cloud CMA Live, you'll like it even better. So I'm going to go over here to View Live, and I'm going to give you a quick tour of what that looks like. Now, the whole idea is when Cloud started building this, it was actually before the pandemic. They actually did it last October. They put these plans into place. But of course, they accelerated it greatly with the pandemic because they wanted agents to be able to present great CMAs over the phone. But they also wanted to make them more live and more interactive. So let me show you some of the cool things that they've done. Now, of course, you're going to build your Cloud CMA just like you always have. So nothing's changed there. You're going to find all your comps in Paragon. We're going to go through that today. The only thing that's really changed is the way that you're presenting your CMA. So the first thing you'll notice is right over here where this hamburger stack is, that's kind of your control panel, if you will. You'll notice that the new Cloud CMA Live has actually got a lot of cool tiles that are right here. And the reason they've given you that is if you're presenting via Zoom or a live streaming service that you choose. The idea is you may want to hop around. If they want to talk about your company or who you are, you may want to be able to hop to a particular section. So you can do that with these new interactive tiles. But let me show you a couple cool features. One, if you go under the hamburger stack, where it says customize right here, you can see here's your integrated live streaming services. So there's Zoom, Skype, Screen, or Hangouts. Now, if you're not familiar with Screen, they're the people who actually created Slack, if you're familiar with Slack at all. But you can choose how you want to present this. Most people are familiar with Zoom, so I would probably present this via Zoom. And then right up here, you can jump around to the different pages. So nice, easy hamburger stack to use. Again, you can still add your custom pages in. And what I mean by custom pages is you can still put in pages that maybe you created. One that I created was, where am I going to be advertising your listing? Because it seems like every seller wants to know, hey, is my house going to be on Zillow? Is my house going to be on this site or that site? So remember, you can still add your own custom pieces in the new Cloud CMA Live. It's just how are you presenting it? So I'm going to go back to home for just a second here. Right down at the bottom, if you're hosting a Zoom call and you want to go through your entire presentation, you can just click Start Presentation, and it's going to allow you to take your clients right through your CMA. Now, one of the new cool things that they did is they allow you to add video links into your CMA. I have a good friend who's a broker who's been doing this like 40 years, and he had this really cool HD video done about his company, his brokerage, and who he is in the industry. So in his resume, when he's going through his CMA, he can actually just click the play button, as you can see here, and it actually starts to play his video. It makes a very impressive CMA that you can now add these video links. I'm going to jump through our company here, and let's actually get into the comps, because I think the comps are what's really cool about some of the new things that they've added. So if I jump into comps, it's going to show me my comparable map, but there's some new cool things that you can do here. Let's say that you are talking to someone about their comps. And for some reason they say, well, Joe Schmagegi on the corner over there, I noticed you didn't include him in the comps. And you're on your map. Now remember, you're doing this live. So you may want to say, okay, let me take a look at Joe Schmagegi's house. That's right here on the corner. I'm looking at the map. I'm not going back into Paragon. What I'm able to do is click on Joe Schmagegi's house. Over here, I can see, oh yeah, I didn't include that comp because you have a 2-story and this is a 1-story. But I can still see the details, and I can choose to include the comp or deselect the comp right from the map without having to start over. So I don't have to go back to Paragon to find that comp to see why I didn't choose it. Another thing you'll notice is it actually calculates for you now. And this is one of my favorite features. I've been wanting this for a long time. It's going to show me that this subject property, another reason I may not have chose to use this as a comp, it has 1 less bedroom. It also has 1 additional bathroom, and it has 30% less square footage. So we're going to talk about rules that appraisers generally use, but you can see 30% less square footage. Well, that's another reason I probably didn't choose it as a good comp for your home. So a whole bunch of new features right here in the live. I am a huge fan of what they've done here. If you click on comps, again, you can stack up the comps. You can see your subject property weighed in next to the comps that you chose. But again, if you forgot a particular comp, you can click on the map and pull it in while you're on these live streaming services so you don't miss a beat. So I think it's very cool. All right. So if you have any questions, a little housekeeping before we get into picking the right comps. If you have any questions in your GoToWebinar panel, which is probably minimized to the right side of your screen, you can ask questions at any time today. Debbie's helping man the questions. So if you have a question or you need to see something again, feel free to put that right in your question box, and then we can go ahead and address it. All right, Debbie, any questions on the live before we jump into what we're here for?
No, nobody had any questions on the live, but I did put a little chat out to the audience to let them know that the handout for Cloud CMA Live that you did, so our cheat sheet is loaded up into the handout. You also mentioned about, you showed how the two had that really cool PDF in there, your market stats and other things that you personally added to your account. I also added the cheat sheet over into the handouts of how you can add your own PDF into your Cloud CMA.
Very cool. And that is, you know, I mean, everybody, all of our members get Cloud CMA. And so that brings up a really good point. What makes you, the agent, different from the next agent who walks in with their Cloud CMA report? Well, what makes it different is that you have taken the time to customize your Cloud CMA. You've taken time to, like I said, I put in things like, you know, the sale record, the BSNA information, the CMA sites that I created, stats from market stats. So again, I want to have all the information. So when I sit down with them, and I by the way, I used this with my clients yesterday, and I did get the listing because I very clearly presented the case of why they should list with me. I know that marketplace, and I know, you know, what homes are closing for. And so you're giving them the additional knowledge. And this is a great way to use this interactive. So you, again, using the live streaming services, so you can answer questions. You're still talking to them. These folks are actually relocating to Florida. And so it's a great way to be able to do this from anywhere and walk them through pricing their home properly. All right, so let's now get into what we're here for, and that is starting your CMA. So I kind of took you on a backwards tour. I showed you the traditional Cloud CMA as a PDF. Now, you could save that to your desktop. You could print it out. If you want to, you know, leave something behind, you can do a printed out copy. You could always email that to them after the fact. You can use the new live. But obviously, the most important part of your CMA is the fact that you've got to choose the right comps. So if you are new to doing CMAs, one, I think Cloud, I think as an agent of 22 years, I think I've now used 7 different CMA programs. And I think Cloud by far is the easiest. It's one of the #1 products across the country as far as consumer ratings, because it's very simple and very easy. But the hardest part really is you doing the job as the agent and coming up with the right comps to make this report. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump into Paragon, because that's really where you want to get started. So obviously when you're doing a CMA, the key piece is comparing apples to apples. So if you're new to real estate and you're going on a listing appointment tonight, if you've got a 2,000-foot colonial, you're not going to compare that to an 800 square foot brick ranch, right? We want to keep them similar because we want to give the sellers an accurate depiction of what their home is probably going to close for. So let's actually get started. We're going to do a kind of a run-of-the-mill example today. And obviously, if you're in rural areas or you're doing vacant land, there's a lot of things that will play into this. So we're going to talk about those things too. But let's actually go into our search, because when we're coming up with our comps, really that's what we're doing. We're searching the MLS for like properties. So today I'm going to use my example of the residential condo. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to pick an area that I'm kind of familiar with. So I'm going to do, the first thing I want to add in is, what am I looking for? So I'm looking for a residential or single family home. I'm not doing a condo. I'm going to do single family home. The next thing is, what status am I looking for? Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm a huge Floyd Wickman fan. When I was getting into real estate, he taught a class called the Sweat Hogs. And you had to have a certain number of appointments every week. I mean, he's just fantastic. And so I always learned that if you're going to sit down at Joe Schmageggi's kitchen table and tell Joe Schmageggi what that house is worth, then Joe Schmageggi already knows the actives in his neighborhood. So I want to be able to discuss those with Mr. Schmageggi. So I want to make sure I'm having all the actives in my report. Now remember, really, what we're basing our report numbers on is the closed. But Mr. Schmageggi, he thinks that I know every active that's going on in his, especially in his subdivision or in his immediate area. So I want to make sure that I'm including those actives. The next thing is, if it's pending, I want to be able to show that too. Because a lot of times Mr. Schmageggi is cutting the grass, and your client goes out and he says, you know, so what'd you sell for, Mr. McGeggy? Well, you know, I sold it for $150,000, let's say. But he forgot to mention maybe there was concessions, you know, there can be other factors. So we want to show that Mr. Schmageggi has not actually closed yet. But I do want to have those pendings because they're going to be familiar with them. The other thing, obviously the most important numbers are what did it close for? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, yes, I want to include my closed properties because that's actually what I'm basing the sales price off of. Now, and this is completely up to you if you want to do this, but a little Floyd Wickman trick that I learned is generally when we're walking in to meet with a seller, that seller is emotionally attached to their home. They think, you know what, and they'll tell you things like, well, Colleen, this home was actually built with golden nails, and therefore I think my home is worth $50,000 more than anyone else's home. Now, to a buyer, having golden nails doesn't mean anything because they don't see that, right? They're seeing just what they're seeing with their vision. So sometimes it's showing them why they shouldn't overprice their home. And so what I've gotten in the habit of doing, and thanks to Floyd's training, was that I like to add one overpriced expired. And the reason I generally will do that is I will find an expired that's been on the market, let's say 300 days or, you know, maybe 250 days. That's been on the market a long time, specifically because it was overpriced. So I will find something that maybe is 50,000 overpriced or has been on the market 300 and something days, and I will include that in my CMA. So when Mr. Schmageggi says to me, well, Colleen, I know you say it's worth X, let's say 200,000, but I think I want to try 250,000. I can simply open to that page of my CMA and I can say, okay, well, you know what, Joe over here on the corner, he felt just like you did. And I know your house is very beautiful and you've done a great job and you've done some wonderful updates, but you can see that he actually has been on the market now 300 days and it was because he was overpriced. You can see he's now dropped his price 3 times and still hasn't sold. So I want to be able to have those types of examples in my CMA so that I can talk them off the ledge of overpricing their home. All right. The next thing is, obviously, I want to make sure it's going to appraise to that value. So, for instance, if I'm looking at a comp from 3 years ago, I know that's not going to work, right? I'm also going to tell you that I hate these MLS calendars. I hate clicking and, you know, so I just go right to this date range. And I obviously want to do what an appraiser is going to do in this market. Most appraisers, especially in this area, are going to go 6 months back. So I'm going to say, I'm going to choose the 6-month back option. Now, as we start getting further into our example, one of the things you need to know is if you are doing this in a more rural area, sometimes you have to open up some of your search parameters. Meaning, you know, if it's a really unique home and it's way out up in Lexington and maybe there isn't a like comp for several miles, you know, or, you know, where Debbie lives in St. Clair, that's a little bit more rural. Sometimes we have to expand our searching parameters or open our circles a little bit. So we'll talk about that too. The next thing is when I'm searching for comps, I don't want a bunch of leases that I have to now go in and deselect, right? So I just want to go into where it says for sale and rent, and I just want to pick for sale. The next thing is I do not want to put in an address here Because again, I want to do what an appraiser is going to do. An appraiser in the area that I selected to do this example is going to stay generally within 1 mile of that subject property. And they even have software to make sure that that happens. So I'm going to show you how you can do the same thing right within Paragon. So we're going to jump down a little bit here, and we're going to go down to structure style. Now, this is where if you are listing, if you're getting ready to list a 1-story brick ranch, well, then comparing it to a 2-story with, 1,000 more square feet, that's really not going to be helpful. And an appraiser is not going to use that comp. So I want to go into structure style, and I'm going to, for our example today, say that I am going to be listing a ranch. So I want to find other ranches. Now, again, you may, if you are in a really rural area, you may have to play with the structure style a little bit. So, but in this example, there's a lot of brick ranches kind of all in this immediate neighborhood. So we're going to use that one for our example today. Also, the first thing I did before I started my CMA is I went into the BS&A record. So if you are one-stepping your listings, so there's kind of 2 rules of thought. Some people, if you took Floyd Wickman's class when I did 20 years ago, he would say, be a 1-step listing agent. Save yourself time so you can go on more appointments every week. And that would mean I have to know about this property when I get there. Now, there are other agents that are 2-step agents. They like to go view the house, maybe take some pictures, do their homework, and then come back. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm kind of a hybrid. There are some people that I know, if it's an estate or if it's, someone who just needs to move very quickly, I may choose to 1-step it. Most cases, I kind of like to do the 2-step process because I like to walk through, ask them about the improvements that they may have made. If you are 1-stepping your listing, then my suggestion would be to make sure you go to the BS&A record and the Realist record. I always run both and get as much information about the property as you can. The reason I'm saying this will tell you how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, and some of the basic information, what the square footage is. If most times it'll tell you if the basement is finished or unfinished, how big the basement is. So a lot of times you can actually start filling your CMA information out right from your BS&A record. Now, if you know they've made a lot of enhancements, things of that nature, then you probably do want to 2-step it because you want to go in and see what type of enhancements were done. Another thing I do, and by the way, when I'm talking about BS&A and Realist, you can go right up to tax information and you can find all of that right there. Another reason that I run both, and I just recently ran into this in Sterling Heights, the MLS record, when I looked it up, of the previous sale was a 1-story home. When I went into BS&A, it was a 1-story home. But then I went into Realist and it said the MLS said it was 1-story, but Realist said it was 2 stories. So there was a discrepancy. Now what had happened was, it was very interesting, the homeowner had actually put a 2nd story on. He put like a dormer, so it was just really 1 bedroom, but it created a 2nd story. Unfortunately, he did not ever pull a permit with the city. So the problem is now we had a discrepancy. But the cool thing about Realist is it told me that, and I was able to ask the homeowner why there was this difference. And that's when he said, well, I put this dormer on because they adopted another child and they needed another bedroom. So he just thought because it was a small dormer, he wasn't going to need to pull a permit. But it's those type of situations that are highlighted in Realist, so you can ask the question, why is there this discrepancy? Sometimes it's square footage. Sometimes it's, in this case, it was the level, but it allows you to ask those questions ahead of time. All right, so I went to BS&A. I found out that this is a 3-bedroom home. So in this area, I'm really going to do 3 to 4 bedrooms. You could do 3 to 3. Then we have my least favorite field in the MLS, and it is the bathrooms total. Okay, now I'm going to be honest, I try to not use this field a whole lot, and I'll tell you why. If I really want to give an accurate depiction of what that home is going to sell for, then really I need more information. Now, the other thing I don't like about this is I am going to use my friend Roger. So Roger is going on a listing appointment, and Roger wants to give them an accurate depiction, or even a better example. Roger is showing a client, a buyer client, homes, and he says, you know, Roger, I have 6 daughters, and I haven't had a hot shower in like 2 years. I need 2 full baths, meaning he wants 2 places that have bathrooms with bathtubs or a shower so that they can go, he can have his own shower and they can have a shower, right? So if I put total number of bathrooms 2, the problem is Roger could be actually dragging this poor man through a bunch of bath and a halves, because what total bathrooms actually does is it counts the number of toilets in the entire home. That means if it's in the basement, it's counted in bathrooms total. So if you want to really give a clear depiction of how many full baths, how many half baths, let me show you a quick way that you can be more accurate. If you grab your scroll bar and you scroll down to where it says secondary criteria, okay, so you see a little drop down here. Now, by the way, you don't have to leave this in secondary criteria. In my real searches, I try to keep this generic like everyone has it, but in my real search, I have moved the fields bathrooms full and bathrooms have up into this top area because I like these a lot better. So this particular home, if I am, or if Roger again is showing that buyer homes and he wants to make sure that there are 2 full baths, then really he doesn't want to use the total field. He wants to do a minimum of 2 full baths, right? That means you see 2 full plus. So if there are 2.5 baths, that's going to come up. But we want to make sure we have a minimum of 2 full baths. Now, why this is important is this is above grade square footage. So that means even if it's in the basement, generally people want to be able to have those 2 full baths on their livable levels of their home, meaning not so much in the basement. Now, I'm going to be honest, I have seen some people who have a toilet in the basement and they have counted that as a bathroom. Well, 1 toilet with no walls in an unfinished basement, in my opinion, that's really not where I'm going to want to go to the bathroom. So I do not want that counted. I want to be seeing full baths on the above grade square footage, and that is where these fields come in really handy, because this is looking at full baths or half baths on the upper levels, meaning above grade square footage. If you want to move these fields into your primary searching, you can actually do that in Customize. As a matter of fact, you can move the order, you can move the fields themselves, so you can put them in the order that makes sense for your searching. So don't be afraid to move these fields around a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to just take that out for the sake of time here. But if you're really comparing apples to apples, remember you probably want to do a minimum. If there's 2 full baths, you want to do 2 full baths. Try not to use the baths total here. It won't give you such an accurate picture of the home. Okay, now in this case, there was really only 1 full bath, so it's probably not a huge difference. So I can do 1 to 2, but if you're trying to give a really accurate picture, especially if you're working with a buyer like Roger was, we want to make sure that we're using those full baths and half baths. Down here, obviously a big factor is going to be a basement. Is it built on a basement? Generally, and I do say generally, sometimes Waterfront's a little bit different, but generally if a home is built on a basement, it's going to bring more value. So I do want to make sure if it's built on a basement that I'm including that yes, it is. Another good example would be garage. Does the home have a garage? Yes or no? I'm going to scroll down a little bit further and we're going to talk a little bit about features. So features are not really something I would recommend adding into your CMA, and I'll tell you why. Most features are optional, and that means that agents tend to not fill features out. It's unfortunate because I think the more information we give about our listings, the better other agents can show the listing. However, if your home has a fireplace and you go in and you say, okay, I only want comps with fireplaces, and the agent never checked off that it had a fireplace, you could actually be losing a valuable comp that may have brought your seller more money. So I generally don't like to search on features for comps. Features are great when you're working for buyers. If a buyer says, you know what, Colleen, I have to have a pool. Okay, well, great. You can add in pool, that he has to have an in-ground pool. But generally, when you're doing a CMA, I don't like to put those in because, again, most agents don't fill out the extras. They fill out only what's required. And again, it's unfortunate because I think the more information we give, the better agents can actually show our properties. The other thing is must not have when you're talking about features. Maybe your client says, hey, I don't want to see anything that is on a septic field. So maybe I want to put, I don't want to show properties that are on a septic field because my buyer doesn't want that. So that's kind of what features are set up for. Keep in mind, if you're working with a buyer though, and the buyer says, I want to either have a pole barn or a oversized lot so I can build one. Well, this is what the must have one or more features is for. So I could say oversized lot or pole barn. And what that would mean is that it has to have at least one of those features for the buyer. But again, features are great when you're working with buyers. I tell people really when you're doing your CMA, I would not use the features because again, you could lose a valuable comp that could have brought your seller even more money. Okay. If you know that this has a 2-car garage, you could add that in there. I generally don't put that in there because what I like to do is I kind of like to filter through when I get my results. If I have a lot of results, then I go back in and I add the number of cars. Because sometimes if you add too much information, you don't get enough comps to do a great CMA. Speaking of how many comps, because that's usually the question that comes up, really what you're trying to do is paint an accurate picture without, you don't want to be there, 5 hours going through your CMA. So I tell people shoot for between 3 and 5 closed comps. That's generally a good number to shoot for. That way you're giving them a nice range. If you can do 5, I always think that's great. Sometimes you only get 2. It just depends on how many comparables there are. We're in a very low inventory market, so sometimes there's not the amount of comparables I wish there were. So just keep in mind, sometimes you have to play a little bit with that number and how much you add, how much criteria you add to your initial search. You can always go back and tighten it up a little bit too. All right, so let's go down to the above grade square footage. So a lot of people will say, well, if I've got 1,000 square foot brick ranch, will a comp for a 5,000 square foot ranch also apply? The answer is no. Appraisers will tell you that now again, this is in the general areas, a little bit different if you're in rural. In the general areas, they use the 20% square footage rule. So the home that I chose today for my comparable was 1,361 square feet. So what you would do is you would take 20% of that number. So I would take the 1,361 and I would find out what 20% of that is. So 1,361 times 20%. So that works out to be about 272 square feet. So that means I would take 1,361 minus that 272. So now, 11 something. And then I would take the 1,361 and add that 272. That gives me my 20% square footage range that the appraiser is going to use. So now it doesn't have to be the Bible. You want to be pretty close. So I'm going to say 1150 to, let's do 1550. Okay, so now I have my 20% square footage rule that if I can show comps and I can say, okay, I know this closed at this dollar and this dollar, I know the appraiser isn't going to throw those out because there's, 500 extra square feet or something of that nature. Okay, so you want to stay with that 20% rule. Now you're probably thinking, okay, Colleen, that's great. You got 6,817 comps. Well, remember, we didn't put in our meat and potatoes yet, which is the actual location, 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 right? We put in our criteria. So we put in what features we know the home has as far as bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage. But really, location, location, location is what we're all about, right? So how do we do that effectively to stay within 1 mile of the subject property? The answer is you're going to do that via the map search. So I'm going to go back up to the top here, and you're going to see search by map. And I'm going to show you some cool tricks in here. So I'm going to click on this globe because now I want to filter down my criteria so I'm looking at it like an appraiser would look at it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go up to where it says center the map, and I now want to add in where I'm doing my CMA or my subject property. So I'm going to type in 41539 Wessel Drive. This actually happens to be a home I recently closed. So I'm going to do, now you'll notice when I put in the address, it's Wessel Drive, but I left off the drive. It's always a better practice to leave off the drives, the ways, the circles, the courts, the boulevards. The reason is this uses Google Maps. So the less information you add in, the better. What I mean is the route street address, 41539 Wessel, comma, the city, is really a much better way for me to search. Less, I always tell people in Google Maps is best, just like when you Google search. The less you put in, the more it quick fills for you, the better off you're going to be. So I'm going to go ahead now, I'm going to click this magnifying glass. And by the way, when you use this map, just so you know, it opens up to either your default that you've set or your office. So if you open it up, it may have a red X where your office is located. That just means the MLS knows where your office is, so that's where it opens up to. It assumes you work somewhere around your office. So now I had actually set this as a default because my office is actually in a different city, but this was an old office address. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on the magnifying glass. And that is going to zoom me into that exact location. Okay, so I click that magnifying glass, and as you can see, my subject property is right here. This happens to be in Edison Court in Sterling Heights that you see right here. But now what I want to do is, of course, I want to stay within 1 mile of that subject property. So I'm going to go up to where it says miles. I'm going to type in the number 1 and search radius. What that's going to do is it's actually going to draw that 1 mile circle and start applying, and I'm just going to zoom out a little bit for you here. It's going to now start applying those comps. Now, when I first saw the circle, I found it very confusing because I'm like, okay, I see the 210 over here. And by the way, if you click on these, it'll show you the comp over here to the left. But I didn't know what these numbers were for. Well, what that means is that these two properties were very close, and because if they did them with like the flags, you might not be able to click exactly on them. So they're telling you these are very close in proximity. So if you click on that number 2, it will actually still open those properties for you. Just know that it's just because the flags are very close. If you were to zoom in, it will start breaking those apart. So as you can see, it just broke those 2 flags apart. It's just your zoom level, and so that's why it clusters them, just to make it a little bit easier to use. But if I want to see what's in those 2, again, you can click right on it. You can even click off of it and see other parcels that maybe aren't listed. So you can do a whole lot with that. But if you click right on the number 2 there, you can see over here, here's my closed comp. And now I can go in and take a look at those to make sure that they look like the comps that I wanted to add in. Okay, so the next thing that I have come across in just doing CMAs for a long time is if I have a unique situation. So I'm going to use Christine Kilpatrick because she's another friend of mine. So we're going to pretend that Christine is doing a CMA. And we're going to pretend that Dodge Park over here, we're going to pretend that these are really fancy waterfront listings. We'll pretend for just a moment. So we're going to say that these 2 clusters happen to fall on this beautiful waterfront, and they're like, $2 million homes. Now, Christine is doing a subject property way off of the water over here though, and it's a traditional brick ranch. So if she were to pull in these waterfront properties, it's gonna radically screw up her numbers. Her numbers are gonna be very, very off. So really what she wants to do is she kind of wants to not have to deselect a bunch of these properties, but she may want to not include that area. So let me show you. So if you picture 1 mile radius, and you want to exclude those $1 million waterfront properties that are popping up, you can go right up here to the draw. So there's a bunch of tools up here, and I want to click the drawing tools, and what I want to do is I want to use the Polygon generally because it's a little more exact, and I want to say, okay, so Christine's got this little subject brick ranch over here. She does not want to include these $1 million waterfront properties. Okay, so I'm basically going to draw a shape right on my shape. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, lady with the fuzzy hair, isn't that just adding more shape? Well, good question. There's one more step. We're going to go back to where it says edit, and we're going to do one final thing. We're going to change this blue check that says include to exclude. Now, what you just saw is those two properties, those $2 million waterfront properties that were going to screw up our CMA numbers, have actually now been removed. Okay, so don't be afraid to draw a shape on a shape and actually exclude it. If you make a mistake, don't worry, you can always hit the X and you can remove that shape. So don't be afraid to draw a shape on a shape. Now, another little thing that I've been doing lately, especially since we had the shelter in place, is I'm not wanting to drive over to neighborhoods outside of maybe normally where I work. I kind of want to see the neighborhood, but maybe I don't want to drive 45 minutes over there, 45 minutes back, and just to check out the neighborhood. Remember, the same great features that are in Google Maps, you can do right from your Paragon map. Meaning there's this little Google man right over here to the right. If you can kind of see that little Google man. If you drag that Google man to the subject property, so let's say our subject property is right here. By the way, I'll even tell you where you're about to set them in front of. If you can see, it's actually giving me the address. If I let go, it's going to show me exactly where I'm setting that man. So I'm going to say, you know what, I kind of want to walk around the neighborhood. I want to see, is it a neighborhood that I think is maybe on the decline? Is it a neighborhood that, is a bunch of brick ranches? What am I looking at? So Westwell Drive was my subject property. And as you can see, I can kind of very quickly see the other houses. I can see, does it have a nice neighbor to the left and to the right? So my subject property, here's the neighbor to the left, here's the neighbor to the right. You can do a 360 view. So I can actually, and by the way, you can see it's actually putting that flag in front of the subject property. So I can say, oh, yep, this is our subject property. What does the neighbor to the left look like? What does the neighbor to the right look like? Okay, great. Now, if I want to see the other side of the street or, view the other streets in this particular neighborhood, this sub is actually very small. It's only like 5 or 6 streets, but I literally can walk down each one of the streets right from Google Maps. So don't be afraid to check out the neighborhood, kind of see what the neighbors look like right from here. And you can do that by just moving that yellow Google man right onto your map. All right, so now I've drawn my 1 mile. I can see I've got some comparables right here. Now I want to do my run search. So I'm going to click run search. It gives me 14 different comparables, but now let's take a look. So if I were doing this in real life and we weren't in a time crunch to be done in the next 9 minutes, I would want to go through each one of these. Now, obviously, one of the big things you're looking at is school district. School district is huge. I want to make sure that my subject property is in the same as the comps I've selected. So I can see, yep, Utica Community Schools, looks like we're good there. But don't be afraid to rearrange these columns either. And what I mean by that is maybe I want to see, maybe I want to have structure style. So maybe if you are in more of a rural area and you wanted to have, structure style up close, or school district up close so that you can see it very easily, don't be afraid to actually go in and move those columns around. So again, you know, you kind of got to play with it so that it's in the right order for you, but don't be afraid if you need to move something within the columns to do that. You can see I've actually added some custom fields here. I actually added the listing agent. That was one of the fields that I wanted to add in. So don't be afraid. Again, you're going to add in your criteria. Don't be afraid to jump around here either. So you've got your criteria, you've got your map search, you've got your run search. So don't be afraid to click on these top criteria buttons to jump around. If you got all the way here and maybe you forgot to take out leases, maybe you forgot to put in, you know, one story, something like that, you can always jump back to criteria, can always jump back to map search, and you can always jump back to run your search again. Now, if you know me, you know I have pretty severe OCD. If you've ever been to my house, every towel in my closet is the same color, folded the same way. Probably why I'm getting a divorce after 19 years, because I do have a little OCD, and I do like everything kind of in that perfect way. So when I look at this spreadsheet, I hated it. I'm just going to be honest. I just hated it because everything's all garbled together. So how can you make this spreadsheet more efficient? Well, keep in mind this spreadsheet looks just like an Excel spreadsheet. If you go to the top and you click status, you can actually filter these. So closed are with closed, pending are with pending. So I can actually go in and I can actually see what I'm looking for, because my goal is, again, 5 closed properties. Now I can see just from the pictures here that a couple of these don't have attached garages, but this one does. I can see this one does. So if I were actually doing this, I would go in and I would go through the comps. Of course, you could add attached garage so that you get less comps in your search. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to choose a couple. I do want to have my pendings. Now, again, having OCD, this kind of looks like a lot. It's kind of all over the place. I really just want to see the comps that I've selected. So I'm going to go up to where it says checked. Now I'm only seeing the comps that I've selected. So I'm not working with a bunch of things. I'm literally just working with the 4 closed comps and the 4 pending comps. Again, if you had actives in there, there is nothing active, unfortunately, in this neighborhood. And so they would all be separated by status because I had clicked on the status heading. Got a good indication right up here of what the numbers are going to kind of break down to be. So if I look right here, I can see the average list is 240. The average sold was over asking, 249. And I actually just closed that property and it did go for over asking. So you can kind of get a little indication right here of how your CMA numbers are going to be broken down. Remember, the big key to using Cloud, you just did. The hardest part of using Cloud CMA is what we just did, going into Paragon and finding the right comparables. Once you've selected the comparables you want, the easy thing to do is send them into Cloud. And how to do that is you're just going to go under Actions. Now, do be careful here. This is something that we keep asking Brian to do, but there are a couple different CMA options. Please be careful. You want to make sure to use the one that says Cloud CMA CMA. Because there is the Paragon CMA. I personally find that very clunky. I find it takes a lot longer. It doesn't have that great look and feel. So make sure you're going all the way down to Cloud CMA CMA. There is a Cloud Buyer Tour too, so don't select that one. That one's if you're working with a buyer and you want to send them like a buyer report on the properties they're going to see with turn-by-turn instructions, things like that. But we want to use the Cloud CMA option. Excuse me. Once you've done that, the hard part is done. Now takes you into your Cloud account. You can see down here at the bottom, it's brought over all the MLS numbers for you. By the way, doesn't matter what MLS these are coming from. It's actually still plugging those in. So whether it's RealComp, whether it's MiRealSource, whether it's coming from CBAR, whether it's coming from, it doesn't really matter where the originating MLS is. It's still bringing those in for you. Then up here, I'm going to give my report a name. So I'm going to call this Sally Seller. Leave any private notes if you wanted to say, you know, we're pricing it a little high. They're looking to put it on the market next month. These are notes only seen by you, the agent. So it's just your personal notes. Then over here, something that they've recently added that's very cool in Cloud, it will pull from the property information from the tax records. So if I start typing in 41539 Wessel, which was our subject property, you can see that will quick fill for me. The cool thing is when it does it, did you see that it automatically went out and got the square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms, and property details. Now, if you need to change those, you can, but the cool thing is it's already pulling that into your report for you. If you have a photo of the home, this is a great place to add it. A little cheat, if you're one-stepping it, you can always pull a photo right from BS&A. So actually, I will go in and grab a screenshot of the BS&A picture, and I load it right in here. So it makes it really, really simple. So very simple. The hardest part, again, to creating your Cloud report is just going in and finding the comparables. Once you've got your address in here, you've got your comparables loaded, you're going to hit Fetch Search, and it's now going to display the 4 tabs across the top to create your CMA. This first one that you're looking at here, again, is just the comps that you've selected. If you made a mistake, remember, don't panic, just deselect that comp. And you can always go into details and adjustments, and you can actually go in and even put notes in now. You can go in and kind of tweak it. You can even tweak the order, which I really like. If you wanted to put them in a particular order, you can literally drag and drop. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm just grabbing that and moving it down to the bottom. So you can actually put these comps in any order you want. And remember, in this market, if you want to give yourself a little wiggle room as far as the price range, that we can do right here. So maybe I know my average sales price, according to this, is $233. So maybe my price range is going to be $230 to $238. So you can even, don't be afraid to give yourself that price range to work with. There's also a net sheet you can add. And then obviously you're just following the prompts. Now we go through this, the entire Cloud program in our Cloud CMA class. And I know Debbie, I think, is putting some information out in the chat. By the way, all of our classes are recorded now. You can find them on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is MiRealSource Media. When you're there, we would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the page so that every time we have new information, or, you know, especially when we're doing the shelter in, we were always trying to provide, you know, the latest updates, what you needed to know. So if you go to YouTube and you type in MiRealSource Media, it will actually display our page. If you subscribe to that, you'll see all that beneficial information, and we'll make sure that you're up to date on everything. Again, in the Cloud class, we'll show you how to add your custom pages. We'll even show you how to use the lead generation tool that's found in Cloud. So once you've picked your layout, once you've picked how you want the properties displayed, lastly, you're going to click Publish. Again, we go through this entire thing in the Cloud class, but it's really that simple. The hardest part is simply picking your comps in Paragon and pushing them into the Actions button, so that you can actually go in and now create that great report. Debbie was kind enough to put the link just now. I saw it pop up for our MiRealSource media. If you click right on that, it'll take you to where you can actually favorite it. And again, if you don't mind, please subscribe. We like to make sure that we keep everybody up to date on all the latest information. All right, Debbie, do we have any questions?
No questions, but we had some really great comments. Christine Kilpatrick absolutely loved. She never knew how to remove an area via the map. So she's picked up something really good today. Roger had asked if you ever used the active listings in your CMA, but you did show that you did. I said, yes, Colleen has selected actives too. So of course, I believe you addressed that pretty well because you want to see what's on the market right now actively.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I would have loved it because I have a buyer looking in this area. I would have loved to have had some actives. Unfortunately, I have been waiting and waiting for something to go active in this neighborhood. But yes, under my criteria, I always do include actives, pending, and closed. I just wish there were a few more actives in this market. So
I love the story that you told a long time ago, and I'll bet you $1 it was probably one of the Floyd Wickman things that you had picked up through the years. That you had almost lost a listing because of the one that you had at the very top. And yes. Do you remember that story? If I'm sure you tell it better than me.
I do, yes. I remember sitting down with the homeowner, and my broker said on the way out of the office, I was getting ready, it's like one of my first listing presentations, and he said, Colleen, get that price down, get that price down, get that price down. So, I walk in there and I'm like, okay, my whole goal here is to get this price down and to make sure this is priced right. The problem is I had all my really low comps like right in the front. And so what happened is by having all of my low comps in front, the first comp that my homeowner saw just about knocked her off her chair, and I almost didn't get to present the rest of my booklet. So sometimes when it comes to the comps, which is what you see right here, sometimes having these in the right order is really key. So, it might not be having the house I listed last night, which was this one, we listed it at I think we listed it at 439. And so if they see, or I'm sorry, 339, if they see the 290 as their first comp, they may fall off their chair. I might want to make the 290 a little further, into my CMA. So don't be afraid to move these comps around. So that they make a compelling argument and still don't insult them to the point where you don't get to show the rest of the comps. If you have to break the bad news, sometimes it's nice to break it gently.
Nice. Yep, that was the story. I remember that. You almost lost that listing there.
I did. And I did end up selling that, and I was very happy. But yeah, I almost didn't get to finish presenting the rest of my comps. So.
And if anybody knows somebody who missed today's webinar, do not worry. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. We have a whole playlist. Colleen and I have been working very hard on getting our YouTube channel just to be loaded with content. And now we're working on smaller, shorter videos to answer just the problems or the questions that you have. So we have playlists in there that are geared towards transaction desk. So if you don't have to sort through all of the videos in there. You have just the ones on transaction desk, generating leads, searching the public records, things like that. So there's a lot of content in there. And this one will be in the CMA folder.
I think it's right down here in our playlist. Yes, right under the CMA folder. So you can go down to where it says playlist. And Debbie did a great job organizing all of these. Debbie, thank you so much. That made it so much better. If you go to our playlist, which you just scroll down and click playlist, you can see all the CMA videos that Debbie organized so nice. So if you want to know how to use the new Cloud CMA Live, we've got a whole class on that. Lisa Harris, who I adore, just my absolute best friend, she did a phenomenal job. Her and Debbie did this live class that was awesome. I just did the highlights and a real quick what you need to know here. If you want to know, how to use Cloud in the traditional fashion, a whole class here. And Debbie did a great job putting these great little fronts. I love this one, Debbie. I hadn't seen that one. That is very cute.
The Price is Right.
Yeah, I love that. The Price is Right. That's really good. So anyway, keep in mind, you can go all of our classes. Debbie's done a great job of making sure they're all getting recorded and they're here for you. You can watch them 24 hours a day. Just remember, if you don't mind, when you go actually to our channel, please remember to subscribe. And you can also click the little bell, which will let you know anytime we have something new that comes out. So keep in mind, Debbie did a great job of putting all the videos in there, and they're organized really nicely.
Well, thank you everybody for attending the webinar. Colleen, thank you so much for taking my small idea and making it absolutely fantastic. Great webinar. Full of content. So I know a lot of new agents that are going to absolutely love this webinar.
I'm really glad. And Debbie, thanks for all you do in, coming up with all these new great classes. And, I mean, Debbie has put on so many classes, and she's really done such a great job of, getting the information, especially through the whole pandemic, getting it out to everybody. And so I think everyone is very, very thankful. And, one thing I did forget to mention is that if you had additional questions, on anything you saw here, this is something we haven't even announced it yet, but I will let you know.
Oh, yeah.
On our Facebook page, you can now request a free or complimentary one-on-one session. Now, Debbie does some, I do them, Lisa Harris does them. So we've got a few trainers. What we decided to do is, because obviously we don't have a classroom where we're meeting, and we want you to watch these recorded classes. But if you watch the class and you said, I just had a couple additional questions, how do I do this in Cloud? And I watched it a couple times, I can't figure it out, I just need a little extra help in that subject. You can go to our Facebook page now, and you can actually request a one-on-one. Now, we do this via Zoom call, and so we can actually shadow your screen. So if there's something that's not looking right, like I had a great call with Linda Fennell about 2 weeks ago. She's saying, Colleen, I did that thing and it doesn't look like that on my screen. So I could actually see her screen. I helped fix what her issue was. It was just something in her settings. But we have all these different classes, and all you have to do is request a one-on-one appointment. It does require you to give us a 3-day notice so we can hook you up with the right trainer. But all you have to do is pick the session and the time that you're available, and we will actually book a one-on-one. Again, it's complimentary. It will book a one-on-one just for you to answer your question. So even if you have a couple questions, maybe 2 or 3 different products, pick one of the products. Someone like myself or Debbie or Lisa will give you a call, and we'll actually walk you through some of your questions. So if you do need a little extra hand-holding, use our Facebook page to book that free appointment.
Thank you, Colleen. Yeah, that was a great idea. That was really, really cool. And that's a huge thank you, Colleen. You got that one going. Rock.
I'm glad I got
my real. Can you tell? All right, gang.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Debbie.
Bye, Colleen. Thank you.
Bye.